Welcome back to learning how to CAD with Autodesk Inventor. In this episode, we're going to cover basic modeling functions for making parts that you can 3D print or just custom parts for your robot in general. To start, we're going to make a very crude model of a phone mount, which is usually one of the most highly printed items every season, although this season we might not need one because we might get control hubs. So, we're going to build off our basic drivetrain here, and we're going to add a phone mount in the back. So to make a phone mount, we're going to go File, New, and then I'm just going to choose English. For the phone mount, it's really kind of whatever you want, or whatever you can find phone dimensions in. But since we're just making a crude model, I don't really need those. And then pick whatever plane you want. And we'll start with the rectangle tool. Actually, I'm going to undo, Control Z. This is how I can think of it. So I'm going to build it this way. We're going to use a rectangle tool, click on the dot, click anywhere else, and then we can use our dimension tool, click on the top line only, and then let's do 3. Alright, and if you double click on the scroll wheel, it'll zoom in, although it's a little too tight for my liking. 2's not right, 1. And then we'll add another rectangle here. Just click in the space, click somewhere else inside this other rectangle, and then this time we're going to dimension the gap between these two. So we're going to hit this line and this line, and then click in between, do 0.05. And we'll do that for all of them. And then for this, if you want, you can type in 0.05 again, or you can type in nothing and go in and click on this dimension we added earlier, and that will set it to whatever that dimension is. And I'm going to do that really quick just to show you. There we go. Now, the important part with this one is you could have done it just typing them all in, except if you needed to edit this dimension, let's say, oh, this gap is too big, so we're going to make it 0.075. If you do this in this current setup, it will adjust everything at once, like that. As you can see, all the edges are now 0.75 inches thick, 0.075 inches thick. But if you did this the other way, where everything was individually dimensioned without this, it's called dependency. If it was dimensioned individually, you'd have to go around and change every one. Now that we've got that, this is where our phone will sit inside of this gap. So we're going to extrude. And to start, we're going to extrude everything. This is your standard one direction. This will flip the direction from what the standard version is. This will be a symmetric dimension, so it will be 1 inch total, so 0.5 inches on this side and 0.5 inches on this side of the sketch. And this is, what's this one called? Asymmetric. So this one will do however much distance you want on either side of a sketch. Like I can set this side to 0.5 like it already was. Whoops, don't want to do that. Back to extrude, click, click. I can set this side to 2, and I can set this side to 0.05. As you can see, it's kind of changing randomly. Well, not randomly, but we're going to go and say 0.5. Nah, that's too much. 0.25. There we go. And now we want to get that sketch back that we had, because that will work for our next extrusion as well. So we're going to right-click on the sketch and go down and click Share Sketch. And now you can use that sketch again for another extrusion. And this time we're just going to click the outside. I'll come back to that tool later, but for now we need more height on this, so we're going to say 5. Whoops. 5. That's probably a little tall, so I'm just going to... Really doesn't matter what this looks like, but I want it to be slightly accurate. And we're going to go OK. And now that we're done with the sketch, we want to make it invisible, so right-click on the sketch and click and uncheck the visibility option. Now there's no sketch there anymore. But if you want it back, you can just right-click it again and turn on visibility. So the next thing we're going to do is start another sketch, and this time we're going to click on this face so that we can make a sketch on the very bottom of the part. And just so we can see it, we're going to do this. And then project geometry. This will set, and then I turned on this construction line button so that this area won't be selected when you're trying to extrude things. But we're going to click in this area, and that will make all of these lines, you can now dimension them and stuff. You won't be able to change them. This error will pop up. You can just accept because it really doesn't matter. But that will set the height of this line based on what it is in the other sketch that we made previously. And now we'll make this 0.5. And we want this to be centered, so we're going to do a little math here. We're going to click on this line and then the top line. And we'll click up here, really doesn't matter. And parenthesis, click on this one, and minus, and then click on the dimension of the thickness of this object, and then divide by 2. And that will center it. And now with this formula here, because there's dependent variables kind of, we can change this and it will still be in the center, so we'll make it 0.25, still in the center. And we're just going to change it back to the old one. And then from here, we're just going to finish the sketch and click extrude. And this time it's still extruded the right direction we wanted, so we can leave it, but we're going to change it to 0.5 and click enter. And now we want to put 2 holes on these sides so we can attach it to the channel on the robot. So we're going to click here and here, and we're going to use our project geometry and construction line tools again to help us dimension the location for these. And then what's the distance between here and here? Oh, it's that. Okay. And then click on the center dot and this line. Click somewhere above or below. And then add a parentheses. Take this minus this. Another parentheses, divide by 2. And that will center it. A little close to the edge for my liking, so I'd probably make that a little wider, but it works for now. But basically what this is doing, if you can't figure it out, it's taking this large dimension, subtracting this smaller dimension, dividing that all by 2, but that centers it because it will only take into account the distance between here and here and here and here, and it will center it based on what that distance is. And now extrude, and we have to click on each circle individually because there's two separate closed sketches in here. And then this time we're going to use the cut tool. This one still has the same options: asymmetric, symmetric, down or up. But we want to go down and cut. And now we're going to change this to a distance of all, because that way if we change the thickness of this section here, of this edge basically, this hole will still go all the way through. I'll show you that here in just a second. I'm going to change this option just so we can see what happens if you don't. So it's 0.5 right now, so it still goes all the way through. But if we change the thickness of this to 0.75, it no longer goes all the way through. But if we change this option to, instead of distance, we change it to all. Come on, I always miss that button. And then we click OK. Now it goes all the way through again. And I'm going to change this back to 0.5. Oops, not you. This one back to 0.5. And there we go. That's our very basic phone mount. This probably wouldn't actually work because this dimension is probably way too big. But we will file save as, call it phone mount. And then, so we can get an accurate weight on this object, we're going to go up and click the generic word here. That's our material tab. And we're going to scroll all the way up to ABS plastic because that's the closest thing to PLA that is on here, is in the Inventor material library. And then file save it again. And then now we go here and place. Click on that phone mount and open. Place it in, constrain. So these extrusions are what's going to make up a lot of your models. But say you need something that's kind of complex and circular, like last season they did capstones. So we made a, can I zoom in on this? Yes, I can. We made our capstone look like this with a bit of a complex shape here. You could not do that with an extrusion. So instead, I used the Revolve Tool. So let's make a new part really quick. Okay. Start a 2D sketch on this plane. And then put in 2 lines. This first line, you're going to change this to the center line option. Click here, and then it's kind of arbitrary where this point is, except for it has to be on that line. And then click this line again, but disable the center line function. Click here and here. And then we're going to make a very rough shape of a pin. We don't want to click on the top of this line because sometimes it'll screw things up. So we're going to click here. Let's go. Woo. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Splines are a little annoying because they have this little checkbox that pops up every time. I'm assuming there's a setting somewhere that can change that, but I'll have to go look for that. And with the spline tool, the more points you put in, the better your shape will be, because it won't adjust the other. Where is this edge? Whatever, we'll just click. And then create. And then we're going to trim this down. I'll show you that tool a little later. I think I might have actually shown you that. But that's our very crude bowling pin. It looks like the top of a bowling pin, though. It doesn't actually look too bad other than that. We're going to use the Revolve Tool. And as you can see, because we have that center line in there, it automatically selected that as our axes around of which we're going to revolve this sketch around. But if it doesn't automatically select that, like that, or the profile, it's kind of the same as an extrusion. Just click the profile, and then your axes, it just auto-selected it again. But yeah, that's the axis. And then you can change it to an angle, so we only want it to be 90 degrees. So now it's only 90 degrees. Or change that to whatever. Two in between only work when you have other figures in here, so we're just going to go full. But these three options are basically the same as extrusion. And then OK. As you can see, it's now our weird looking bowling pin. Kind of the top of a bowling pin. Very disproportionate one, I guess. And then you have this line that shows up. That's kind of where the two, when it revolves, that's where the faces kind of meet. So, as you can kind of might have been able to see based on how you would have made these parts, there's many ways to make different things, like this phone mount. Here, let's just do a very basic example where we start a 2D sketch on this plane. And to make a rectangular prism, we could either do the full length, let's say 2 by 1, do the full length and height, and extrude that. Do it that way. Or we can do the width and height, and then do the full length this way. Or you could do, I suppose, the width and the height this way, although it'll still look the same as it did before. When the first option, I mean. And now your rectangular prisms like that. So as you can see, with CAD there is a lot of different ways to make the same part, except for like the bowling pin, you can only do that with a revolve, but you could do it with a few separate revolves or one full revolve. It's kind of whatever you think would work best. So that's it for this episode. In the next episode we're going to cover sketch constraints, which will help you make more complex sketches that are still dependent on certain dimensions.